In light of recent events on my channel, I began to think about why the hell somebody would fake a pregnancy. Hello world, it's your girl Liz here, back with another video. Diabetes, preeclampsia, high blood pressure, your very life being in danger, financial obligations, stress, potential hair loss, your body being, all the things that come along with the wonderful gift of life. But I just kept asking myself, what would make somebody do that? Since on this channel, I love to talk about psychology. I am not a clinician of any kind. I am just a hobbyist who likes to read about these things. And so I did some research and we're going to look at that today. Recently, I learned about two major cases in which these two women were essentially faking pregnancies repeatedly to people. One of which was the Something Was Wrong podcast. In their season 18, they did a 7-episode series on a woman named Caitlin Braun from Canada. I'm not sure she's in jail right now, but she has actual charges against her for fraud and a myriad of other things. She was fraudulently using doula services because she kept telling people she was pregnant. She was not actually pregnant. The doulas are, helping her, servicing her, helping her through passing miscarriages, or their job is to help women through pregnancy. And so basically she had defrauded and lied to all these women to help her out, mostly for free. I have a lot of notes here, so if you see me looking that way, that's exactly what I'm looking at because it's so much information. Another major case of this that made headlines was in Australia with a famous rugby player named Josh Reynolds and his Instagram model girlfriend Arabella Del Busso. She basically contacted him on Instagram and, linked up with him, and they ended up hooking up, actually having sex. Can't say the same for all of these cases. And then, like a couple weeks later, she told him that she was pregnant, and he decided that he wanted to keep the baby. He ended up trying to, start a relationship with her. And because he really loved children, he had nieces and nephews that he was really close with, and he was just ready to start that chapter of his life. And so he did everything that, you're in your ideal situation, what a guy would do when you tell him you're pregnant. He tried, let's make this work, let's, etc. Of course, she lost the baby. Then she was pregnant again, and she lost it again, and, etc., etc.
And from going by everything that's out there, you've had cervical cancer twice, 2 brain tumours, ovarian cancer, 3 miscarriages, your mother's died 3 times, and your sister's died. If we ignore the fact that's completely impossible, you've had some bad luck.
Yeah, I was more than bad luck.
Are you fucking kidding me? We'll go into some of the details of that a little bit later on. As I get into this, I first do want to talk about something called pseudocyesis. Pseudocyesis, or false pregnancy, is when a person believes that they're pregnant when they're actually not. It's also sometimes called a phantom pregnancy. With pseudocyesis, a person actually will have the symptoms that they are pregnant. So some of the symptoms that they may have is swollen feet, their stomach starts to distend, their breasts are swollen or painful. And even with all this, they'll have pregnancy tests or ultrasounds and they won't actually be pregnant. It's an actually extremely rare condition, and there's psychological and hormone reasons for that. But there is a difference between pseudocyesis and pregnancy delusion. Another reason why someone might do this is because of a mental health disorder called factitious disorder. It's basically a mental illness where someone will fake actually being ill or impaired in some way, and they may exaggerate symptoms that they already have from an illness or sickness in order to manipulate or gain sympathy from other people. People with this disorder go through great lengths to cover up their lies and to also prove their illness or what have you, that oftentimes they're not able to even identify that what they're doing is severely mentally deranged. They will oftentimes continue on with the deception, even in the face of evidence that what they're saying is clearly not true. they will just keep going with it. So some of the symptoms that they may have is like superior knowledge in medical terms and medical processes and all this kind of stuff. Conditions that get extremely bad for no apparent reason, or they may have like a very serious illness that comes out of nowhere. The symptoms might be inconsistent. Another big thing, which is something that I also noticed in these cases that I read about, is that they'll seek care from multiple different doctors, multiple different hospitals, sometimes using a fake name, or maybe going in for different medical issues. Oh, this, that, it's this or that thing. There's also oftentimes a reluctance to let friends or family talk to doctors, or doctors to talk to friends and family. Definitely when it comes to faking a pregnancy, mental health issues is like ding, ding, ding. But there was a study done in 2015. Basically in the study, they went through the internet and just did tons and tons of research on, false pregnancies and delusions of pregnancies. They had some interesting demographics that I wanted to share. It says, a total of 40 articles were reviewed, which included 84 cases. Demographic characteristics revealed that about half of the patients were aged 20 to 40 years old, and the most common diagnoses were schizophrenia at 35.7%, bipolar disorder at 16.7%, and depression at 9.5%. There are, sometimes, let's say, innocent delusions of pregnancy, and of course, more nefarious delusions of pregnancy. This belief that you're pregnant despite evidence to the contrary. Through this study, they even said the rarity of the delusion of pregnancy, coupled with the lack of coherent data about its characteristics, calls for a systemic documentation of literature pertaining to the symptom to inform further clinical practice and research inquiry. But I actually don't think that this is as rare as, like, for example, this study says, because all I had to do was type it in on YouTube, and there were actually many stories about this. I noticed that there's a running theme on a lot of the stories that I've read, videos I've watched, and, these various stories. One big tell and one trait that they all kind of share: compulsive and habitual lying. They lie about big stuff. They lie about little stuff. They met this celebrity. They lie about they dated this famous person. They lie that they're sick. They lie that they were here. They lie that they have an amazing job. It's just lots and lots of lies. And so I remember watching a video on Psychology in Seattle where he did talk about people who compulsively lie a lot. There's actually a lot of little kids that go through this. They'll lie about their father. My dad's in a king, and I live in and then you go to their house and it's like they live in a trailer park and their dad's a drunk or whatever. But they do this because it's like the only way that they can cope with their situation. This is kind of like also how like narcissist type people are born. It's one of the reasons. There's different factors, but they don't feel like they're that great. They don't feel like their life is that great, and so they have to tell themselves that they're great in order to cope. It's like the brain's coping mechanism and way of protecting itself. This does happen more often, but one of the reasons why I notice is because all these cases I've read about, all these people have multiple victims. With the Arabella lady, basically just kept lying. And she actually managed to get him arrested for assault, and they ended up acquitting him. It was literally just her word against his, and when he showed them all this evidence, like, her word was complete shit, which is why you don't cry wolf to the police or anybody else. Once he got arrested though, and like I said, he's a famous rugby player, it went to national news in Australia, and all of a sudden he said that he was waiting in court for his moment for the judge, and all of these people started messaging him. She did this to me too. She did this to me too. She said she had cancer. She said this. A couple of these stories as well that I've heard about the fake pregnancy, there is usually some kind of fake cancer. Some fake cancer diagnosis or some kind of terminal illness or brain cancer or something like that. That they always end up having. And so all these people kept coming out, and it turned out that this woman was a huge fucking scammer. She would tell him like, yeah, my mom died, I need help for the funeral. She hit him up for $45,000. Previous guys she was dating, she would tell them that she had to have some major medical surgery and they would raise money for her or give her money, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. Like, it turned into a full on scam.
Yep, she told me she had cervical cancer. Gave her about $2,500, $3,000 for treatment, towards the treatment.
One of the men had even successfully sued her for fraud and obtaining money by deception.
And how people like this aren't in jail, beyond me. So I also found this article on Women's Day, which is basically the online version of a magazine called Women's Day, and it has 10 confessions of women who have faked a pregnancy and the reasons why. So here are some more of the reasons why somebody would do this, apparently. I pretended to be pregnant so my boyfriend would stay with me. He ended up cheating. Of course, this is a large reason why we know that this has happened. It's like these women do this in order to get the guy to not leave them. Josh also said the same when he was doing his interview with 60 Minutes, that anytime they started to get to a lull in their relationship, or when it seemed like he was starting to pull away, she would either, oh, I had a miscarriage, or oh, I'm pregnant again, or oh, I have another miscarriage, or oh, I have a very rare, uterine cancer disorder or whatever. And as I mentioned on Megan Fox's channel when I talked about the Clayton situation, I'm not coming up with this from my ass. I just do not remember where I heard it from. But I believe the reason why his accuser is, taking him to court and taking past, I don't even know what to call them, past one night stands, whatever, past hookups to court, is because she cannot let them go. She doesn't want to be abandoned by them. She's angry at them for trying to abandon her, and she wants to maintain contact with them by any means necessary. Even if it means I got to have a restraining order against you in 2 years, and then maybe in 2 years I'll meet up with you again to kind of re-up the restraining order. I believe it's part punishment and part, I need to keep in contact with you. I don't want you to ever abandon me, and now you never will, because you will always be tied to me through this. As soon as it starts to end, the case starts to close. Oh, we got to re-up. We got to do another thing. We got to file another, we got to, do all these kind of things. It's all to, in my opinion, to maintain contact. Another woman says, I faked a pregnancy at my last job just to get time off. That says more about the current economic and work system in this country, but that's another video for another time. I faked being pregnant to get my annoying roommate to move out. I actually don't even think that one's not that bad. If you really can't figure out any kind of way, what else than to say like, hey, I'm having a baby and my baby daddy needs to move in. Like, can you please leave? I lied about being pregnant just to make my boyfriend happy. That's weird. None of these are good. You should never lie about being pregnant, people. I'm just saying, like, the other one was just kind of funny. You know what I mean? I pretended to be pregnant on a plane so I could use the bathroom in first class. Okay, this one sounds narcissistic. I lied about being pregnant so many times because I really just wanted a baby. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's like the compulsive lying, the wanting to seek attention. It's like, think about it. Pregnant women get a lot of attention in the world. People will give up their seats for them on the bus or the train. People help them. People open doors for them. They are protected. I do believe that pregnant women have extra protections in the law. A pregnant woman walks by, strangers will come up to her and say, congratulations, and you look gorgeous, and people are always checking up on you. People are giving you lots of attention. People are giving you lots of gifts. I mean, obviously, being pregnant, having a baby is a huge deal. I feel like it's not hard to see why these people who struggle with extremely depths of hell levels of self-esteem, they have extremely low self-esteem, they are miserable with their lives. I feel like it's not hard to see why they would like want to tell people that they're pregnant, because they're like, oh, I'm gonna get all this attention, these gifts, like everybody's gonna want to be around me and check up me, when ordinarily that would not happen. I faked my pregnancy to make my ex-boyfriend look bad for leaving me. I mean, like I said, none of these are good reasons at all. They're all horrible reasons. Don't ever do this. I'm glad that this article exists so at least we can know what are some of the reasons why. In the past, I faked being pregnant to get attention. I just went through a miscarriage on my own because I was afraid to tell anyone for fear that they wouldn't believe me. Wow. I gotta read that again. In the past, I faked being pregnant to get attention. I just went through a miscarriage on my own because I was afraid to tell anyone for fear they wouldn't believe me. And listen, someone who's faked a pregnancy in the past 10 times can still get pregnant. You know what I mean? And it actually be real. But then no one's going to believe your freaking ass. If you have a miscarriage, people are not going to believe your freaking ass. They're going to be like, you're going to have you had a miscarriage? You mean like your other 10 miscarriages that you had? No, guys, I really had a miscarriage this time. Yeah, sure, Jan. This is what happens when you put yourself in that position.
So I found a very interesting article on a website called Monitor, which is actually from Uganda. And they also talk about instances of women faking pregnancies. According to Henry Nusubuga, and I'm sorry I'm going to butcher these names, a counseling psychologist at the Makerere University School of Public Health in Malago, different reasons can force a woman to fake a pregnancy in a marriage, however one stands out. The major reason for such behavior is societal pressure from different sources. These could include her husband, in-laws, and even own relatives. Society in general believes that any marriage or relationship out of love has to yield into an offspring, and when this fails, it might raise questions. In the African culture, for example, barren women were chased away from their villages. Despite the change in some of these practices, a woman that cannot bear children faces public rejection sometimes, so they might end up feeling insecure at different stages in life. Also, when one takes long to conceive in a marriage, her husband, relatives, and friends tend to express their worry in the form of questions like, when are you going to give us a grandchild, niece, or nephew? Why aren't you conceiving? Other members in society may eventually draw conclusions about her being infertile, explains Nusubuga. The article also tells a couple stories about women who were later on arrested for faking pregnancies. The month of January 2010 introduced two interesting cases of married women faking pregnancies. Namatovu Nuru Kalala and Maria Goretti Nantongo were both arrested on January 8th and January 11th, respectively, for lying to their husbands that they were pregnant and had eventually lost their babies. Nantongo had to go to the extremes of purchasing a 6-month-old fetus at 230,000 Ugandan shillings from Shadia Nakanwagi, a nurse at Clinic in Malago suburb, just to deceive her husband that she was fertile but had a miscarriage. The other woman, Namatovu, on the other hand, successfully faked her pregnancy to the time of delivery, during which she claimed that she had lost her set of twins. She later presented a set of dolls in a coffin for burial and almost lost her life to the angry villagers who had come to attend the funeral. Both women were sentenced to 12 months in jail or a fine of 300,000 shillings. Another story from 2007 involves a woman who lied to her husband for 9 months that she was pregnant and even went to the extremes of having cuttings on her private parts just to show that she had indeed delivered a baby, but it had died during delivery. Her story evoked confessions from neighbors who knew she was faking it all along and the eventual intervention of the police. It was later proved that she was never pregnant and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. I just want to jump in and say that I don't think women who fake pregnancies should go to jail per se, unless the faking pregnancy veers into criminal behavior like fraud, false police reports, swindling money, scamming, stalking. Then absolutely you should be punished to the fullest extent of the laws.
I also read an article on Psychology Today, and it was mostly like kind of repeating some of the things that I was mentioned earlier on, like men telling stories about how their exes would, after they broke up with them, they would all of a sudden come up pregnant. Michael had been happily involved with a new girlfriend for a few weeks when his ex told him she was pregnant. We had slept together one time a month prior, and the first thing she demanded was that I tell my new girlfriend and that I break up with her. He ended up insisting her that divorce proceedings would be continuing to go through and that he was not going to break up with his girlfriend. Have the baby or no have the baby, like do whatever you want pretty much, which I feel like is probably the best way that you could handle this type of person that does this. Is like, whatever, just do whatever you want. Like, I'm not getting into this ping pong match with you. He says that the last time he slept with his ex, it had been a huge mistake. I noticed that that's a running theme. And a terrible lack in judgment. But she assured me she was on birth control. Yeah, we gotta stop the whole she said that I was on birth control thing. Okay? In my last video, when I talked about, getting to know people before you sleep with them, don't ever rely that someone else is going to have the same family planning ideas as you. If you don't want to have a kid and you're a guy, do not have unprotected sex and inside, okay? Like, why? Guys, we are in our 30s, 40s, and 50s. Why are we still having these conversations? You don't want to have a kid, wear a condom, okay? And pull out. If you're a girl and you don't want to have a baby, make the guy wear a condom, make him pull out, and be on birth control if that's your thing. When he said that he was not going back with her, whether she had the baby or not, then she suddenly, of course, had a miscarriage. I mean, if she did really have one, sorry for her, but it's kind of interesting how it suddenly happened after he said that he wasn't getting back with her. Then he said that she was furious that he didn't come over and help her after that. So it was like the first I'm pregnant is the bid for give me attention. And then the miscarriage is the second bid when that didn't work, So briefly, I want to read some information from a study based off of what I was talking about earlier about pseudocyesis versus delusions of pregnancy. They are totally different diagnoses. So in the study, in the discussion portion, the researchers note that it's important to consider the associated psychotic features that might be present in women with delusions of pregnancy, as were present in the case that this study was based on. On the other hand, women with pseudocyesis have the clinical presentation centered on the false signs of symptoms in pregnancy. So those two things are not the same. There are no associated psychotic features in such cases, like pseudocyesis, and that the two conditions warrant a different line of management.
So this sounds a bit clunky, and I just want to break it down real quick. The purpose of the study was to bring awareness to the possibility of the delusion of pregnancy, which is actually different than pseudocyesis. Pseudocyesis doesn't necessarily mean there are mental health issues present, but being that more doctors are familiar with pseudocyesis, they may not recognize delusion of pregnancy in a patient if the person doesn't have like an obvious and blatant psychotic presentation. Like if it's not very, very obvious that this person is mentally ill, they may not know that this person is actually just delusional. By definition, delusions are false firm ideas that cannot be corrected by reasoning and are out of keeping with patients' educational and cultural background. Delusions can also be regarded as a mode of adaptation to stress and may serve as a metaphorical or allegorical function in which the patient portrays her problems and experiences. Usually, this aspect of a delusion is often disregarded in the context of its apparent illogicality. In this patient, the wish-fulfilling function of the delusion may be apparent. The patient wants a son and wants to be reunited with him at any cost, and the only apparent means of doing so is through giving birth to a child. Deutsch has also pointed out that a pregnancy could be used to magically avoid being abandoned and helpless. The defensive, restitutive function of this delusion is obvious in the face of extreme insecurity being faced by the patient. While loss of love, loss of a love object, or loss of fertility is postulated to operate in the development of pseudocyesis, similar mechanisms can be seen in the development of a delusion of pregnancy. So here it says in the study pretty blatantly that a person may go into these delusions in order to avoid being abandoned and feeling helpless in the face of their extreme insecurity.
Out of all those reasons, I haven't heard a single damn good one. It's just not something that anyone should ever do. If you're that afraid of someone leaving you, your boyfriend breaking up with you or whatnot, go get some chocolate, go on a vacation, go see a therapist, talk to a friend, cry, go to church, something. But faking a pregnancy is never the way. With these major cases, it's really sad to see how far that this could go. That it goes so far as to swindling people out of money. It has gone so far as to getting the police involved, making false accusations to the police, making false police reports, fabricating medical documents. It's really hard to navigate. How do you even fix something like this? How do you even fix someone like this? It is my opinion that people like this cannot be fixed, but that's just me. I mean, my favorite psychologist on YouTube, Dr. Kirk Honda of Psychology in Seattle, talks about people like this. Once they're in their 30s and 40s, they're going to need 30 years. Literally, they spend their whole life like that. They're going to need just as long of a time in order to, have some kind of semblance of recovery. These people, especially if they don't have insight into their illness, and insight into your illness is basically an understanding, self-reflection into what's going on with you. A lot of people who are compulsive liars like this, or narcissistic people like this, they don't have any insight. It's the nature of the way their mind works is it's always trying to fight off any self-criticism or the thought that they could be wrong in any way. So it's the disorder is protecting it. It's has its own self-defense mechanism. It would be severely devastating for them to realize who they are. I think most of them just end up coping with how they are. Coping, and then the people around them end up just living with it or figuring out how to manage it rather than curing it. But that's just my opinion. Of course, these situations should always be taken seriously because there are ways in which this can end up very bad. There have been cases in which these situations may escalate to these women hurting an actual pregnant woman. There have been tons of cases where pregnant women have been attacked by these women, killed, stomach cut open, baby taken out. The fetal snatcher, desperate to be a mom. On January 13th, Lisa Montgomery was executed by lethal injection at the Federal Correctional Complex in Terre Haute, Indiana. The Supreme Court denied an effort by her defense attorneys to hold a competency hearing to determine if her mental illness made her ineligible for the death penalty. In 2004, Montgomery had duped Bobby Jo Stinnett, then 8 months pregnant, into believing she was a friend and a customer. Once inside Stinnett's home, Montgomery strangled her and cut the baby from her womb. Police learned about Montgomery via emails and recovered the child. Montgomery went to prison. There are around 30 such cases on record of female predators who steal unborn babies. Variously labeled womb raiding, fatal snatching, and Caesarean kidnapping, the act is a rare but dangerous form of stalking. Its clinical name is newborn kidnapping by Caesarean section. These women become so desperate to acquire a baby they'll kill for it, even quite brutally. And then it goes on to tell various stories of this happening. Unfortunately, sadly, those are the reasons why someone would fake a pregnancy. Again, these should always be taken seriously. Know who you're dealing with. It's really sad, especially the situation with Clayton. I feel like there needs to be some legislative action on that part, because how can you go to the courts to petition for a family plan without having to prove pregnancy in the first place? I mean, there are literally thousands of episodes of Maury at this point saying, you are not the father.
If you're the father, you're going to go back to helping this child.
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. Let's find out right now. When it comes to 8-month-old Xander, Peanut, you are not.
So if you're going to go to court, you're going to file papers, you're going to do all this stuff. The first thing the court should do should be court-ordered pregnancy test, court-ordered paternity test. Like, that's the first thing that should happen. You know, us feminists, we go out there, we march, we fight, we do our thing. Men's, go to courts and fight for immediate court-appointed paternity test. Turn your anger into legislation and change this law that's kind of, you know, it's not right. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know if you listened to the Something Was Wrong podcast or if you saw that 60 Minutes interview. I'm gonna link both of them in the description box below. Make sure you check them out. Make sure you also check out Dave Neal's channel because he talked about the Clayton Echard situation. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please leave a comment, rate, and subscribe. Anyway, later.